Each year, on Rosh Hashanah, I select a single word for our meditation and contemplation. This year, the word is chesed. In fact, this year's word is so important and so valuable to us in our society today that chesed is not only the word of the year, but this year HCRJ has made chesed the theme of the year. I don't know if you've seen our logo yet, but this year has been determined the year of chesed. Everything that we will be doing this year as a congregation will be connected in one way, shape, or form to the value of chesed. Our curriculum in religious school, our programming for social programs and social justice, our mitzvah projects, my messages from the pulpit throughout the year will continue to remind us of the importance of and the value of chesed in our faith and in our lives. My hope is that if we can maintain a sense of chesed in our souls and keep chesed in the forefront of our minds and in our actions, this world and our community will be all the better for it. So what is chesed anyway? I keep using this Hebrew word, chesed. Well, chesed is a challenging word to translate into English. It is much, much more than just kindness, which is what it often is translated as. Chesed is a human characteristic, but it is also a divine attribute. It involves honor and dignity. It includes mercy and compassion and empathy. Acts of chesed are completely selfless. There's never any string attached to an act of chesed, and it's having one's heart overflowing with a sense of love and kindness. Embracing chesed involves utilizing every opportunity that we possibly can to benefit the needs of others. It is an act and a virtue that connotes loyalty and allegiance and covenant. Chesed is mentioned 245 times in the Torah. 245 times. That means that this concept, this value, this virtue of chesed is super important. And most of the instances that refer to chesed are connected to the acts and to the character of God. And therefore, as we as human beings strive to weave chesed into our hearts and our minds and our acts, we are ultimately weaving godliness and a connection to the divine into the world in which we live. In his book, Everyday Holiness, Alan Marinas defines chesed as, this is a clunky definition, but he defines it as generous, sustaining benevolence. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. Generous, sustaining benevolence. It is an idea or a value that connotes an ongoing mindset of benevolence or love and compassion, and it also connotes an element of giving, the generous part, the generosity, and it is sustaining, which demands commitment. It is an idea or a trait that is rooted in giving, but this kind of giving is godly. It is a kind of giving that is purely from our hearts. Generous, sustaining, benevolence, chesed. So what does this clunky definition look like in everyday life? What does chesed look like as we interact with others? When we act with chesed, we strive to extend a sustaining benevolence to the world around us. We are basically humbly offering ourselves. Complete humility is involved. What are we offering? Our resources, our wisdom, our guidance, our financial assistance, our love, our compassion, whatever it may be. Whatever we have to give, we can offer it with humility. No strings attached whatsoever. And not because the recipients are asking for it, but we are giving it because we recognize the need. When we pause to think about this concept of giving, this concept of benevolence from our hearts with love, we don't have to think very long here in the city of Houston, because we understand it from the catastrophes that have fallen upon us over the course of the past few years. Certainly, Harvey created a country that offered itself to us in this kind of ways. Chesed after catastrophes like hurricanes and fires and floods and earthquakes are abundant. This kind of giving. In the wake of catastrophe, chesed abounds because people have a sense of urgency. Tragedies tend to bring out the best in humanity. Tragedies tend to help us see what others need even before they know what they need themselves. It is easy for us to give during times of crisis because a crisis often helps us see the pain and suffering of others very quickly. It's easy to see what people need in a time of crisis. It's easy to put ourselves in their shoes. We know what it feels like. This was one of the many driving forces that led HCRJ to decide that this year, 5,781, would be the year of Chesed. In response to the financial and personal burdens generated by COVID-19, our leadership embraced the idea of Chesed, the virtue of Chesed, the value of Chesed. Sensing the pains and the added burdens of religious school fees, the HCRJ board unanimously waived all religious school fees for the coming year because there was an anticipation that this could become a barrier to a child's Jewish education. We wanted no barriers. We wanted only from the kindness and to model the kindness and to model chesed in this world. The board said, let everyone learn. Let there be no stumbling blocks. Let there be no barriers to the learning and education of our kids. Extending ourselves by supporting those in need with things like financial aid, clothing, food. These are all beautiful acts of chesed, and these are things that we have done throughout the years. But more often than not, as noble as this kind of giving may indeed be, they are usually driven by circumstances where the needs of others are absolutely clear. It's clear in a time of crisis what another person needs. But what about chesed in our everyday lives? Day-to-day chesed is a bit more elusive. Sustainable, kind, generous, and loving responses to the needs of others is not something that comes 100% naturally to us as a human species. We care about others, we love to give, and we love to help, but it takes a lot more self-awareness to know what people need all the time around us. And this is why our tradition encourages us to nurture a mindset of chesed, to see others in a way that we begin to recognize what they need so we can respond at any point. So how do we begin to train our minds to do this? How do we begin to see opportunities to extend that love, that loving, sustainable gift to another person or a community when it's not a time of crisis? Well, one lesson I like to share with a bride and groom as they stand under the chuppah has to do with how to create a sustaining, healthy marriage. How do you create a relationship that is loving and committed and loyal and supportive throughout the years of your lives together? And one simple lesson I like to remind them is, in times of conflict, you can either be right or you can be happy. Now, I'm sure I've shared this in sermons before, but in this context, it really is a very helpful tool in developing a mindset of chesed. Because for most of us, in times of conflict, for most of us, in times of disagreement, for most of us, actually probably 90% of our day, we like to be right. And we like to be doing what we think is the right thing, even if our perspectives are off. In moments of crisis, in moments of conflict, in moments of arguments, empathy, compassion, care for the other person's perspective typically go right out the window as we seek what we want in the moment. Most of us want to win. We dig in our heels and insist we're right. We listen, but not to the needs of another, but we listen for holes in their arguments so we can slip it in and tell them, I'm right, you're wrong. See, this is the nature of what's going on in our world today. We need a bit of chesed. A mindset of chesed in times of conflict shifts the focus from the self to the other. It demands nurturing an inner sensibility to step back from our own side of the argument and try to see, hear, and understand the situation from the other side. Chesed demands extending love and care in the form of humility. Chesed demands setting aside the need to win long enough to consider a possible compromise, a possible middle ground, or perhaps I'm completely wrong in this situation. Chesed demands not merely listening, but really hearing and then responding without any expectations. It is a mindset that seeks to build relationship. It is a mindset that is seeking to build connection. Whether we are children or adults, all of us want to feel heard. We all want to feel validated. We all want to know that others care about us and understand what we're feeling, and perhaps even why we're feeling it. At the heart of a mindset of chesed is finding a way to create a deep bond with another that is rooted in compassion, kindness, empathy, caring, giving, loving. During the High Holy Days, we call this mindset atonement. It is a way of understanding our relationships with others and ultimately with God as being at one. Atonement is at one-ment. Chesed, extending love, kindness, compassion, mercy, empathy to others, is inextricably linked to atonement. Over the course of the next 10 days, part of our task will be to nurture the divine attribute of chesed as a primary tool in this process of atonement. And to assist us in this journey, starting tomorrow, every single day of the week, from tomorrow to Yom Kippur, I will be sending out a very brief chesed video exercise that helps us to focus on a little project to help us nurture a little more kindness, a little more love, a little more generosity, a little more mercy, a little more benevolence in our spirits. Like a bridge over troubled water, as the song says, Chesed can go a long way in bringing our world together as we recognize the needs of others and how we might respond. May the year 5781 be a year of Chesed for us all. And as we listen to the song of the year, may we embrace this value and think about ways to extend it to the world around us. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so.